Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next installment of the chapter of this section of the episode of the thrilling adventures of the Reading Cow in the world with Basil Davidson's war epic Partisan picture. Where, and this is going to be part 4, where Basil Davidson was actually dropped out of an airplane into Yugoslavia, met Tito to join up with the Partisans and stuff like this. So that's what we're talking about here. So he's rapping about around the time that they're going to be going into Yugoslavia. So here we go. Continuing. Landings are always bathos. That's what he says. Kid you not. The men at the bottom are disappointingly normal human beings. Disappointing. Actually, he didn't say that. He said the men at the bottom are disappointingly ordinary human beings. Isn't that interesting? I spontaneously said normal. I would say that ordinary is a little bit more British. Yeah. With 2 legs and troubles of their own. The men at the bottom are disappointingly ordinary human beings. With 2 legs and troubles of their own. Yeah. All right. They ought to be supermen, but after all, they are not. Oh, yeah? Tell me what I ought not to. Don't like that. I don't like it. All right. So, you see them first when you're swaying to the ground. I guess he's talking about being on the parachute. Is that what it's like? Awful. All right. I'll be up chucking. That's what I would be doing. Where's the jammer mean? Small gray shadows. That's what you say. Yeah. That's what he says. Yeah. You see them first when you're swaying to the ground, small gray shadows in a gray world, legging it over the grass to the point you are going to hit. And once you are on the ground, they rush up at you, shake your hand, and thump you on the back. Oof! Hey, Froggy baby! You remember Grover would always do that to Kermit. Wham! Slap him in the back. Yeah, thump you on the back. All right. They thump you on the back and pull your ridiculous jumping gear off. Pull, actually what he says is, pull your ridiculous jumping gear off you. That's not what I was said. All right, they are flesh and blood of this world and not the next. Oh, I thought it was the angels, but no. All right, you look into their welcoming faces and feel very happy. You want to kiss the ground, kiss it, the mud tracks of the tanks, my face. Oh, I'll never jump out of a plane again. No. But at the same time, there's a feeling of deflation. Deflation that's what he says. You know that the real business is only just beginning. On the ground, when I landed myself, there was Bill, and he's got an asterisk. It's like, names will be changed to protect the idiots. Protect the innocents. No, okay. There was Bill, and I don't know what Bill's going to do, because I haven't read this yet. But yeah, so apologize in advance if that was harsh humor at somebody else's expense. All right. Who was our first liaison officer with Tito's general staff? Bill, the liaison officer with Tito's general staff. We shook hands and peered hard at each other. Here's my Barracuda scar. Here's my battling the giant Krakatoa squid scar. Alright, we shook hands and peered hard at each other. Last time we had met, 11 weeks before, there had been 1,000 questions to which neither of us, and no one in the Middle East, had known the all too necessary answers. Now at least Bill would know the answer to some of them. partisans gathered around us, compact figures in the darkness with silhouettes that showed slung rifles, bombs at their belts, a few with blankets across their shoulders. "You're probably hungry," Bill said. "The boys are hotting up some M&V. M&V?" About a mile away. "They're practically starving, the people here." "Did you bring any mail for us?" All right, so there they are at the drop zone. All right. We walked in the moonlight towards his camp. Later I would learn that summer nights were perfect for partisans, but too short. The mountains were no longer crumpled silver cloth as they had seen from the aircraft, but high shadowed peaks that ranged away on every side from the summit of Petrovo Polye upon which we had dropped. So they paratrooped onto the summit of Petrovo Polye. We could Google that. Know all about it. Isn't that amazing? I'm going to do that on the sly here. Or maybe I should tell ChatGPT to tell me what it is. Well, ChatGPT, what is Petrovo Polye? Oh, I missed my E there. I gotta go back. It's like some noble's name. So they named a mountain after some monarch or something. It's like, oh, Petrovo Polye just means Peter's Field. Peter's Field Mountain. They dropped us down Peter's Field Mountain. That's where we landed. A short grass plateau some 3,000 feet above the sea, the cliffs fell away steeply into a ravine along which, far below, there glistened in the moonlight a narrow thread of silver water. One of our party had landed unpleasantly near the edge of this ravine. We stood for a while on the edge of it, looking down at the river in the bottom. There was a smell of clean mountain air, of Europe again after the heat and stench of Africa. Bosnian peasants that we passed stretched out their hands and felt our clothes to make sure that we were flesh and blood. "Are you guys real?" "Yeah. I feel a swatch of Angora." You get that? It's a reference to Ed Wood. Wasn't he a paratrooper? Yeah. All right. So there was an asterisk when they said, okay, we're going to give Bill's name or whatever. Bill was the guy. Chief liaison to Tito. All right. Okay, so at the bottom here of the page, they're like, that was Lieutenant Colonel F.W. Deakin, DSO. And his name is spelled Deakin, DSO. So for you history buffs, there's your note. All right. So the Bosnians were just touching them to see if, are y'all really real? Flesh and blood? All right. Are you vampires? Let's see. Horrible frankincense monster. All right. If men came dropping out of the skies, it might be well to expect anything. I go along with that. I would agree. Yeah. And they were desperately in need of everything. Oh, they were like, the Bosnians were like squeezing their lips because they're like, They're like, rump roast here. Grabbing a buttocks or whatever. We could cook this because they're freaking starving in the wilderness. Yeah. That could, wow. It's like the werewolf stories. That's where they come from. The stories of werewolves, the forests of Europe, you know. And in the Volsung saga, there's an episode where it's like what you do to become a werewolf in this Volsung saga is they're in the woods and they get these magical wolf outfits, clothes that they put on, and they become werewolves and they prey on people there for a while. They're eating them. That's what they're doing. Yeah. All right. So, if men came dropping out of the skies, it might be well to expect anything, and they were desperately in need of everything. They watched us go by, gently restrained by the others from falling on our necks. Ah, the pretty man, they murmured, straining to see us in the darkness. Beside the barn that Bill was using for his wireless station, we found the rest of his party, his guards, and his pack ponies. The light of a fire showed us all this little by little, fitting one feature grotesquely into the next. Pure Robin Hood, you see, Bill said. We shook hands all around, immensely pleased. Immensely pleased. You gonna have some tea? Is it tea time yet? Yeah, okay. Yeah, sometimes a British sound comes across in this guy's. Yeah. I wonder if he had what kind of accent he had. South London. South? All right. You get that date there? It was August 16th, 1943. The forests of Dracula land. No, well, Yugoslavia. Comparable, definite. Yugoslavia means South Slavs, the land of the Southern Slavs. All right, so Bill and I parted 10 days later on our several missions, but for a little while we were together and could exchange much information. Later, Vlatko came, making a third in our conversation. He was Tito's liaison officer with Bill's mission, so he's on the other side, right? So they're like the liaisons of the liaison, of liaisonizing each other. All right. In the following year, he was to be Tito's envoy in London. Yeah, you can't lie about this stuff. They're definitely going to be in the news, man. This guy's like he's in the thick of things. These guys are going right into the thick of things. All right. Yeah. The son of a Serbian general, Vlatko Velebit was a lawyer who had formerly practiced in Zagreb. His path to partisan leadership had been no easy one. It's not so simple for the son of a general, a bourgeois intellectual, to prove his sincerity to the party, he said during those first days. He had to prove himself first by illegal work in Zagreb in 41 and 42, and illegal work in towns was the hardest discipline of all. He had spent long months in torturous conspiracy and waited for appointments in Zagreb parks with the snow up to his knees, sometimes all night. Lived on a razor's edge between detection and success. Whoa, man. Snow up to your knees all night long. Can people do that? Or is this like drama? He could tell us if we could find out how to talk to him. Maybe he could get on a Zoom meeting. He's probably passed away. But what if he was alive and you could talk to him? So you better hurry because he's not going to be around much longer, I think. All right. We used to sit in the grass on Bill's knoll. He had a knoll. His grassy knoll, yeah, above Petrova Polya. Vlatko was thin and pale, the natural hardness of his face accentuated by the starvation of past weeks. For they had nothing to eat but roots and horse meat and occasional loaves of bread in their trek from Montenegro. Look at a map of Yugoslavia and look at one of those geographical, ones where you can see the mountains and stuff. It's wilderness, man, walking on the ground through all that stuff. Yeah, and trying to stay in the thick of it where you're not visible from the air and stuff like that. Had to be rough. He was unshaven because there were no razor blades. He wore a heavy jacket of black cloth and black corduroy trousers, very baggy, and he had no shirt. On his head he had a dirty black tatovka. Tatovka? Oh, that reminds me. When I was reading before, the guy was like, and Felucas with Latin yards 5 stories high. And I was like, Feluca with a Latin yard 5 stories high? That's like Godzilla. What the hell is that? I have no idea. And I actually on break, I went and I looked it up. And man, I had seen these things. See if you can remember in your mind, like around Egypt or whatever. It's feluccas are the boats that have those big. It's like a big giant shark's fin. The sail is so the boat is like down low in the water like this, and it's got this sail that's like big curve, like a dorsal fin of a shark. And if it was 5 stories high, it would be a felucca with a lateen yard 5 stories high, right? And that's what it is. So yeah. I try to and this is just to talk about like when I'm reading stuff, sometimes I'll look stuff up immediately when it's just like completely incomprehensible. And sometimes I won't, but I'll try to store it, squirrel it away in my mind, and look up Tatovka. Oh, he says what it is right here. Yeah. The pattern of military side cap adopted by the Partisans. So I wear my Tatovka, and then I'm in the Partisans. That's my little Star of David thing. It says I'm one of the guerrilla fighters that everybody should kill. All right. A variation of the old Serbian shekacha. The Serbian shekacha. Shekacha. Man, that lady's dangerous with a knife. Shekacha. Yeah, what is a shekacha? So that's one thing that I'll do too is people go, how do you remember so much stuff? It's crazy. Memory. Yeah. And one of the techniques is visual memory. If you can hook, a word with something visual, it stores it differently in your brain. It's a way to help you, remember. It's a gimmick, help you remember stuff. And you can be humorous and fun with it, and everything's your own idea. There's some guys that illustrate the technique for the periodic table. It's like they come up with a cartoon strip where they imagine the statement of the elements in order is some kind of like little cartoon, and they visualize it, right? So there's an image for each little element, a parallel image, something that sounds like the sound of the element. All right. His boots were patched and down at heel. His boots down at the heel? It's not like he's like wearing flip flops or something. Down at the heel? Is that what that means? He was intensely embarrassed about his appearance of neglect and poverty, and kept explaining that for the time being there was no possible means of improving it. And he kicked one dilapidated boot against the other. We've spared nothing. Bill has seen what we did in Montenegro, what we suffered. We fought the fascists wherever we could find them. Stripped to the waist, two-fisted combat. Yeah. And this is worthy of remembrance, I think. I'll tell you a little story about me. I worked with Bosnian refugees, and it was a weird situation. Catholic Social Services were resettling mixed marriages. Germany, and when they're setting up that, and this is my story, not the book, but it's talking about the same place. It's like Germany, when the contemporary Yugoslavia war happened, the breakup of the former Yugoslavia happened or whatever. At the end of it, Germany took the most refugees, right? And at the end of it, Germany was like, they set up ethnic enclaves, everybody can go back home. And they were expelling them, right? But what that meant is that mixed marriages, you were in trouble. Now, what's a mixed marriage, right? This is a problem with these East and West boundary countries where you have these different sects of Christianity and the Protestant Reformation and Islam, and different sects of Islam, right? And this happened in Albania, and it was so bloody that they when they established Albania in contemporary times, they declared themselves an atheist state. They so hated the religious sectarianism, bloodshed. All right. So when Germany was expelling these people, who they were, the ones that they expelled that were mixed marriages couldn't go back to the ethnic enclaves because they were separated out, you know. So my girlfriend's father was Orthodox, technically. I mean, of course, they were all communists, for God's sake, for decades, right? But after the war, it was like, oh, well, mom's Catholic and dad's Orthodox. We can't go back home. And there were also the issue of Orthodox married to Muslim or Catholic married to Muslim, right? So all the different permutations of mixed marriage between Orthodox Catholic and Muslim. And so they got the Catholic Church settled thousands of these Bosnian families. And at that time, I started speaking Bosnian. I started picking it up like really fast, you know. Go to class and I'm like, I've got the book, you know. Bosanske fraze o ovoj knjizi su tematski grupisani i odabrane zbog svoje neposrednosti, kratkoće I važnosti za potrebnog prostegla stanovnika Sjedinjenih Država. Which is terrible, but it was weird how quickly I was picking it up, and I got my DNA checked, and it turns out that I've got like Roma and South Slav, right? So, my DNA is predominantly Irish and Scottish. It's actually northwestern Europe. You know, like just here you got the Iberian Peninsula, and then you got France up there in the north, Normandy or whatever like that. That said that that's where the majority of my DNA was from, but I had Roma and South Slav, and I was like, I really pick up the language really, really fast. And I really wonder if there's some kind of genetic, because I damn sure didn't pick up Japanese. I took Japanese in college, and I tried pretty damn hard to learn it, and thought it was hard as hell. Every single sentence had to practice. Right. And I got to where I can speak a little bit of Japanese, but it's definitely harder than Chinese. I think people don't realize that. Chinese, Chinese is subject, verb, object. So I eat rice, you know, whereas Japanese is all backwards and convoluted and different ways of saying everything depending on your relationship with the person. So the verb conjugation. Oh. Yeah, it's much harder. Chinese is a lot simpler. So yeah, don't hesitate to learn Chinese. Join my Reading Cow Learn to Read Chinese course, and we'll together learn to read the Baijiaxi. Right, I'm working on that. All right, so now, to connect that to everything, what I was saying, you get an affinity. You feel that connection to a country or something. And it can be quite painful, and this is one of the reasons. During that time, like when in the United States, the guys came up with the idea for, it's like Schuster and what was the other guy's name? I forget. Came up with the idea for Superman. Man, it was from Nietzsche, the Ubermensch, right? What if we had, you know, this was like a way that, you know, because if Superman got married, then he'd have super babies, right? And then that would be, you know, explain where all the world is going. That's very Nietzschean, right? As to a new age of super people, right? Now, what does that have to do with this? It's like in the German ideology, they were influenced by this, and Nietzsche had these ideas like, it's like, you know, it's a transvaluation of morals to try to heal the sick. It's like the Jews foisted the worst crime the Jews committed on the human race is foisting Jesus Christ onto humanity and making morality immoral. In other words, you're supposed to help sick people and dying people. And those people are sick and dying. And says, get away from them. Find the people that are strong and healthy and take care of them. That's what he frickin' says. I don't know why people still... I really have a hard time understanding why people study Nietzsche. Syphilis all up in his brain and stuff. Very sick person. He says a lot of very sick... And the people say, well, you're taking him too literally. Genealogy of morals, human all too human, are you kidding me? Yeah, look at all the bad stuff he says in there. Inhuman, kind of brutal stuff. So, connect, what this whole conversation started with is like, after experiencing all these things, I really, it hit a nerve whenever the idea of studying the Holocaust in Yugoslavia came up. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to look at it and stuff like that. But I recommend everybody do look at it because it has some characteristics, right? In that, Yugoslavia was the first place where the Germans declared the region free of all Jews, Judenfrei, right? And they fought like hell, right? But some Germans wrote, and I shouldn't just say this offhand because I can't remember exactly where I read it, but I read in numerous cases that the resistance, the fierceness of how they fought in Yugoslavia, partisan warfare against the Nazis or whatever, the ferocity of it strengthened the resolve of the Nazis, right? And you can learn from that how certain disasters of history are able to come about. In other words, it takes two to tango, right? And the more tango, that's going to be. So, and I don't want to go into it right now. This book is probably going to get into some of the stuff. I'm sure it will. But there's a lot of legends and there's a whole history that's definitely, you shouldn't, just because, like I did, I avoided the topic for a long time because I felt emotional pain. And I had to go through that. I didn't mention this earlier, but I had to go through this thing of I'm working with all these Bosnian families, and every family's like half Catholic, half Orthodox, half Muslim, half Catholic, half Muslim, half Orthodox, all the different permutations and stuff like that. And then they bombed Yugoslavia, right? And then, after they bombed, the military response, they declared it to be genocide. The military response to the bombing that they started, they declared it to be genocide, and then carried on it really bad. So all the Bosnians around me were like, man, we don't even want to talk to you anymore. Eventually, I'm going to go home and I'm going to fight your country. So one guy said to me, well, and that's not speaking for all Bosnians, because most of the Bosnians, they do want to go home, but they damn sure do business here. Good business. I've met numerous. One guy right up the road from here, got shot in a robbery and killed. Poor guy's running like a Bosnian bakery. Really, really nice. One of the best things in Lawrenceville. And somebody was just trying to get $50 or something and shot him and killed him. Yeah. But anyway. So, yeah. And that, in a sense, by that's one of the things that made this book pop out and make me want to look at it a little bit more closely, is I wasn't so averse to knowing more details about what happened. So here we go. Vlatko was a powerful man, and he was then in spite of his hunger. He sat there hunched up on the grass, the collar of his filthy jacket half turned up around his close-laid ears and let himself talk at last to the outside world. In those early days of our arrival, they were brimming over to talk of themselves, of what they had done and meant to do, suffered and would suffer again, fought and were willing to fight. For 2 years, there had been nobody to talk to but their own kind. They talked now with boundless enthusiasm, with curious childlike dignity, with snatches of anger or dismay, with a mixture of complete assurance and utter uncertainty. They assumed that we would believe nothing of what they said. For were we not reactionaries who had come likely as not to speculate on their military ability and laid proof upon proof, they were determined that we should take nothing for granted. There you go. Tough guys in the woods, right? Vlaco would come wearily over to Petropolya from the copse 3 miles away, where Tito had his headquarters. We would go down to the river at the bottom of the ravine and sit naked in the sun, looking at jury documents captured from Chetnik commanders, which proved their complicity with the occupiers. The Chetniks were fascists too, right? Yeah. They're capturing their paper, reading their correspondence and stuff. Yeah, they're working with them. And when we were tired of doing that, we would swim in a pool. There's and I forget what you call these, but like a Vados pit. If you know me, you've seen often have been to caving and going into vertical caving and stuff. And there are these pits that are vados, which means they form a big shaft, and they're very deep. And like there was a period at the end. Hold on just a second, dear.
It's not recording.
It is recording, dear.
It's not.
It is. I assure you, and it's going to be on the internet.
It's circle. Oh, okay.
Right. So if you got your pants on, or what?
When can you pause?
No, I cannot. Okay, but if somebody would give me a moment to finish, there's a big discourse, and I'm gonna look it up and come back and talk about it. But there's a big discourse about these sorts of caves that were there in Italy and up there in Yugoslavia. There's a bunch of karst limestone uplift, and when there were big groups of Nazi POWs and Nazi collaborator POWs being held right at the end, they flushed them back into that wilderness, and they met the partisans, and there was a big period where the partisans just said, you're guilty of treason or whatever, and they would walk them into those pits. Right? They wouldn't shoot them or anything. They would just take big pit, 250 feet deep, and they would just line them up and walk them into the pit, and there was a lot of outcry, okay, here are these guys that are working with the Nazis, right, trying to take over, they're gonna, we're gonna be under the new version of Yugoslavia, it's gonna be the fascist version of Yugoslavia, right? Opportunists, right? And here they're getting flushed back into their country, and the partisans are there in the woods, starving. They can't feed all these people, and these are the guys that murdered their families and perpetrated the Holocaust and all that stuff like that. And yet, all in some discourses, all the sympathy had towards them is lost with this outcry regarding those caves where they executed people. It's like, and it's tragic, but I don't find it surprising in the least. It's like, man, if you let these people go, they're going to band together and kill you, Really. There's too much at stake with these guys, So, yeah, they were put to death. And, and I've heard a lot of that, those the stories of guerrilla fighting and stuff like that. Bullets and stuff are pretty precious, right? And you don't just waste them. So it's very probable that there's a lot of truth around the stories of those executions. But who knows? Maybe I'll delve into some archive and be able to bring it on the next episode of the show, of the thing. that this is, which is the reading cow from another world. Bing! And I just want to look. Yeah, that's a good place to start. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.